we are going to record, but certainly if people are comfortable with putting their videos on, if that's accessible, we do, as much as virtual allows, we do like to have this be a bit more of an intimate conversation. So if again, that's accessible to you and that, hi Kurt, hi Kim, it's so nice to see you, Fernanda. Hopefully by the end of our time today, we'll be on a first name basis. I think this kind of work is work that has to happen in community, and um, as we'll discuss, we do try to do this in a very collaborative way of solidarity and sharing. And so we consider you kind of honorary members of the Heart Study just by virtue of being here. So it is lovely to see you. And with that, I will do a quick land acknowledgement also because I'm not situated in Calgary, and then pass it off to my co-presenters, and then we will do an introduction. But certainly I wish to acknowledge, especially as we're coming into Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th, that I am residing on the lands that are part of the treaty and traditional territories of Mississauga of Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot nations. I recognize the Indigenous peoples and are the original ancestors and the original stewards of these lands, whose presence dates back to time immemorial. Further, I acknowledge that these lands are also home to a diverse community of global Indigenous peoples. Certainly, as an individual residing in this area, I am committed to the journey of reconciliation. I acknowledge the need to confront both historical and ongoing injustices faced by Indigenous peoples in this territory. I recognize the significance of treaty rights, and I am committed to educating myself and advocating for the rights and well-being of Indigenous communities. I also wish to formally acknowledge the Anishinaabe roots of the name Mississauga and aspire to contribute to making this area a safe and welcoming space for all Indigenous peoples. And I'll pass it over to you, Laetitia and Alyshah, for your land acknowledgement from where you're calling in from today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandy. So I do go to the University of Alberta, but I'm actually currently in Ottawa. So just to address the land that I'm currently on, Ottawa has been built on the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The people of Anishinaabe Algonquin First Nations have lived on this territory for millennia, and their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. If you've been in Ottawa, you know it's a very lively city, a gorgeous, gorgeous city. Everywhere on Turtle Island from coast to coast, we are so fortunate to be on such amazing land. And really echoing what Sandy always alludes to is that truth and reconciliation goes beyond a land acknowledgement at the beginning of a meeting. As we kind of draw near to the end of the month, I'm sure everyone's aware it's going to be the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So I really hope that everyone can find a way to meaningfully connect, with the land that they are on. As a little plug, the University of Alberta does offer a free Indigenous Canadian history course. It's available online. You can do it at your own pace. I've taken the course and I loved it. I think it was such a meaningful way to learn about historic and contemporary Indigenous history. So I can put that in the chat, but I definitely recommend folks check it out. And then I'll pass it over to Alyshah for an Edmonton land acknowledgement.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am currently in Edmonton, Alberta, so I'll be doing my own land acknowledgement as well. I am on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route of the Nihilwak, Anishinaabe, Niitsitapi, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. I really want to emphasize that we're all bound by the spirit and intent of the treaty. Too often, these agreements between nations are excluded from the stories that we tell about the past, this place, and ourselves. And I think as we enter our respective fields, as the presentation goes on, and as whatever we do in the future, we must collaborate with the Indigenous peoples whose land we reside on.
Thank you so much. As we continue with our gratitudes, we do want to extend a huge thank you to the Alberta SPOR unit and the entire team who have been so gracious in inviting us here today, but also in supporting this research from original inception. I was fortunate to do the graduate studentship at Alberta SPOR. and also get additional support from pretty much every one of the team members. So we couldn't have done it without you. And we're so, so grateful for your support throughout the study and continuing as we sort of wrap up the study, but all of the knowledge dissemination as an example of this session today. So I do want to express from all of us our deep gratitude. And so this is a bit of our agenda for our time together, but we do want to leave a lot of space for questions, queries, thoughts, concerns, things like that. And so we're going to do a bit of a welcome and introductions that we sort of started, a video abstract. If you hadn't had the opportunity to read the manuscript, we'll give you a very brief version so that you can still feel like you can engage in it. A little discussion about power, because you can't talk about patient-oriented research without talking about power. And then I'll turn it over to my incredible co-researchers and our knowledge mobilization team, Laetitia and Alyshah, to talk more in depth about the study and the manuscript and the things that we're trying to elucidate, those like very practical strategies. We're moving beyond theory to like sort of the how-to. And really, I like to say it in this way, this manuscript is a love letter to people that are endeavoring to think about being involved in health research, specifically young adults with lived and living experience, to know what to expect. And I'll give a very small anecdote. When I had one-to-one meetings with all of the people that expressed interest, I tried to create a space for folks to assess if this would be the right opportunity. And I asked a lot of open-ended questions. It was only halfway through the study where people had said, if I only knew now, like at that point, but you don't know what you don't know. And you can't ask questions if you're not sure, and you can't advocate for yourself if you don't know what's possible, especially if you're coming into it for the first time. And so this is what this manuscript is really about. It's those young people who are saying, hey, before you've considered it, or even if you've done health research before, here's an opportunity to look a bit behind the scenes. And so that's really what the HEART study is kind of, which is helping enable access and remove barriers to support for young adults with mental health related disabilities. And as Laetitia and Alyshah both always say, what we're trying to do with the study is right in the name. But we really couldn't have a study about removing barriers and then replicate them in the study itself. So we had a moral and ethical responsibility to conduct our study in the ways that we were actually doing the research, and letting that research also guide what we would do in working through the patient-oriented research process. So I'll move into introductions without further ado. Very briefly, again, my name is Sandy Rayo, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Calgary, and I was fortunate to be involved in the HEARTS research study.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Laetitia. One thing I've learned from Sandy actually doing all these introductions is that it is so programmed in ourselves to introduce who we are professionally, the things that we've accomplished. But I don't know about you. Sometimes I don't remember everyone's accomplishments, but I do remember the little things about them. So I'm going to skip all the things about me. You know, I'm a student. You heard that at the beginning. I'm going to tell you a little about who I am, kind of why I got involved with the study as part of my introduction. So I'm someone who has lived all across the country, you know, everywhere from British Columbia to Newfoundland. I'm so fortunate to have seen, you know, Canada from every single angle, but I've also experienced the geographic inequalities in mental health access. You know, living everywhere from rural towns to big cities. I think that's always been a really big motivator for me getting into mental health advocacy. It's something I've always been passionate about. I started volunteering with Kids Help Phone, the largest provider of mental health services, when I was 12. And I'm still volunteering with them today. That's actually why I'm in Ottawa. I'm helping represent them. And yeah, and I've also, you know, I'm always really been into research. I'm a nutrition student, but that's not professional. That's just to let you know that I love to cook, I love to eat, and I love to bake. I think yesterday I made like 2 pies. I had to freeze them because I was leaving out here, but so that's how you'll see me spending my free time. I'm really into fitness. And I am just really humbled to be able to share this space with everyone here today. And thank you for making time in your evenings to be here. I do know that the time was moved. But that is also part of removing barriers and making things accessible. Maybe some folks who usually couldn't attend were able to tonight. But with that, I'll pass it over to Alyshah for her introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to echo Laetitia a little bit and introduce myself personally rather than completely professionally. So my name is Alyshah. I am currently studying psychology at the University of Alberta. I got involved in hearts a little bit later in the study, actually completely by accident. I stumbled upon Sandy's website and I knew immediately that this was something I wanted to get more involved in, something I wanted to learn more about. I sent Sandy a message, and long story short, here I am today. I am so, so grateful I got to be part of the team and learn about knowledge mobilization. Hearts is where I kind of became introduced to research, funny enough, and what a wonderful introduction it has been. I've learned things that is not really taught in class, is not really commonly talked about yet. And I am so excited to be here and to be presenting. And I'll pass it back off to Sandy.
Goodness, we're only a couple minutes in and I'm starting to get teary-eyed. So we really are representing for the entire Hearts team. We honestly had babies of the lab, Nalu and Jackson, who came to our virtual meetings. We had parents of the lab who listened to us do our presentations and prepare for, so many of the things that we did. We obviously had pets of the lab, something really, really special. And we also had 2 private partners and one partner that mainly communicated by text. And I think really what we're trying to impress upon folks is that most things take a village. And that's really what the Heart Study became. And I think that that is really what the power of participatory engaged scholarship can be. And it doesn't mean that there's any less rigorous in terms of research. In fact, it's so much more deep and broad. We actually were able to have the Heart Study span across every province in Canada. And it really drew so many people to it because we were trying to do it in a good way. So with that, we're going to hopefully it will work, play you a bit of our video abstract here. Fingers crossed.
Welcome to a glimpse into the world of health research shaped by young adults for young adults. This is our behind-the-scenes look at the Hearts Study, where we've turned our experiences into lessons for everyone, especially if you're stepping into this space for the first time. Many of us have been there. You join a healthcare study unsure of what to expect. Sometimes it feels like you're just a small part of a big machine. But what if your voice could shape the research as much as any other researcher? Our journey into the Heart Study revealed insights every young adult should know before diving into health research. This is from us to you, so you know you're not alone and that research can be different and better. First, Primus Inter Pares, Latin for first among equals. We use this principle to ensure everyone is valued equally. Your experiences and insights are as crucial as those of any expert in the room. Engagement should be adaptive and differential. This means the study adapts to your life and circumstances, not the other way around. Whether adjusting participation methods or scheduling, your convenience and well-being matter. Compensation is not just a token, it's your right.
Andy, I'm not sure if it's
Whether through
playing
direct
on your
payments,
end,
childcare
I personally
resources,
can't see
or
anything.
opportunities for growth, every
really?
form of your
It's like
contribution
fully playing
should be
on my end.
recognized and rewarded.
Did you see anything?
I can see it. I think there's some comments too that others can see the video. It's just like
Can
a
you
little
hear it
bit.
also?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Oh,
Maybe
Laetitia,
it's
can you
just
see
me,
now?
my bad. I'll try to figure it out on
No.
mine then.
Hopefully. Oh no. Technology, I love you. So hopefully I can get it to play from where I paused it. Darn. Okay, it looks like it'll.
Welcome to a
Nope.
glimpse into the small part of a big machine, different and better. First, Primus Inter PARES. The study
Can
adapts
people
to your
see it
life
now?
and circumstances, not
Thumbs
the
up?
other way around.
Thank you, Kurt.
Whether adjusting participation methods or scheduling, your convenience and well-being matter. Compensation is not just a token, it's your right. Whether through direct payments, childcare resources, or opportunities for growth, every form of your contribution should be recognized and rewarded. Equitable dialogue and trust are foundational. Research shouldn't be a maze of complex jargon. It should be transparent, making you feel included and understood, allowing you to give meaningful feedback. It's also about building a community, not just filling a participant list. Long-term engagement comes from mutual support, mentorship, and collaboration, creating an environment where everyone contributes freely. This is what we embraced in the HEART study. We challenged the status quo and strive for research culture where hierarchy is dissolved and every person has agency in the research process. If you're considering joining a health research study, remember these points. It's about stepping in and using your power, contributing to a collective endeavor that values every voice and every story. You're not just a subject in a study. You're a key player in a larger mission to make health research inclusive, fair, and transformative. Know that things can be different, and with informed expectations, you can help shape that difference.
Okay, so sorry about any of the tech issues, but Alyshah has kindly put the link so you can take a look at that. But I think one of the things that was really important for us in setting up the stage for this sort of participatory research was addressing some of the hierarchies and addressing some of the things that are most often like there's so much that's talked about in patient-oriented research or participatory research, especially in a healthcare setting, that is fine theoretically, but then when you're trying to actually put it into practice, you find that those are where the barriers happen and the challenges happen. And there's some undergirding assumptions because of healthcare hierarchies and also the ways that sometimes we view things like expertise. We've moved away from language of capacity building to capacity sharing, recognizing other people's strengths and recognizing that the power we all hold. And as a group, we've really moved away from the language of empowerment, where the original idea is that the core researchers or the institutional research or things like that are giving power over to the co-researcher, the patient research partners or things like that, as opposed, and that kind of has this sense of a power over, like I have something that I'm giving to the other co-researchers, right? And that's why we called it Primus Inter PARES, where PARES actually is the Latin term for equals. Is like, how do we actually set the stage for this view that we are all equals? And what does that mean? And equal doesn't mean the same, but recognizing the strengths and the powers and the opportunities that we all have to share to this research. And so we take from this research article that talks about these different aspects of power. So there's power within, power to, there's power with, and power through. And we really tried to focus the HEART study on what's in that pink box and to think about power in that capacity, which I think regardless of if you're in a lab or if you're in community or if you're in an inpatient setting, wherever you do research, this is something that cross-cuts anywhere. Is that how do you fundamentally think about the strengths and skills and why you have people on the research team? and starting to recognize that there are some of these biases that we bring around what certain people have to offer and what they don't. And so I really do want to highlight that as we sort of try to break that quote unquote empowerment myth and really discuss power in greater detail, so that we would all feel that we were on equal footing. And certainly we didn't get it right all the time, and we're not trying to present something like we did. But I think that that is something that we really wanted to make sure that people took from the presentation today and is embedded throughout the manuscript. So now I'm going to pass it over to my co-researchers, Laetitia and Alyshah.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. So now with that context, we're here to talk about our manuscript. So the purpose of the manuscript, there wasn't just a single purpose. There were multiple purposes, and it does so for the wide readership of the audience we hoped to target. So the first and foremost objective that we had was transparency. So we intentionally chose not to present a glossy, polished account of what happens behind the scenes. In our study, we did not avoid talking about the tensions, the challenges, and the issues that we encounter. Doing so would actually be a disservice to people with lived experience. Without sharing these realities, patient research partners face a rude awakening when they get involved. This can lead to disengagement, attrition, so people leaving the study, harm to their health and well-being because they feel unprepared and sometimes very misled. So we feel that to foster true, meaningful engagement, we have to lay bare the complexities and challenges up front. In terms of who we worked with, there was really no cherry picking team members. Literally when I joined, Sandy did not ask for, CVs or anything. She did not ask for my background, my professional background, what I did to get here. There was no cherry picking. Our study focused on equity deserving, equity owed young adults. And these were individuals who didn't have excess time, resources, or finances. And despite these challenges, we were unified in our belief in the study's purpose. Everyone recognized that we had meaningful and significant contributions to make, and the study would have to adapt to. It wasn't pull up seats at the table, but rather to build a whole new table. And like Sandy just talked about, in terms of capacity sharing, this term replaces capacity building in the study. This represents the reciprocity and mutuality that we value in our study. It wasn't simply about leveraging lived experiences. It was about all of us benefiting from the unique skills and expertise of each and every team member. So we all have power and we all have strengths that we can use. And as a collective, we were nearly 20 strong, and we leaned on each other's strengths to create something greater than we could individually. Our secondary aim in the manuscript was to contribute to open science. So we believe that to develop more ethical and egalitarian strategies in patient-oriented research, it's crucial to share resources and how we went about doing things. So there's no gatekeeping. We've made it a point to offer anything we created or learned to other research teams, and we'll offer the same to you. If there are any resources that you or your teams need, we're more than happy to share them. And this aligns with our commitment to openness and collaboration. And as we can't cover everything in the session, if there are any other things you may find useful, we have related manuscripts and insights, which I'll also touch on. We currently have 5 manuscripts under review about the patient-oriented research process. Our most recent publication, The Measure of Meaning, is about redefining success in patient-oriented research, which came out just a few months ago. However, the most important piece we've released so far in our process report is called From Insights to Impact. So this report was a thoughtful reflection on not just what we did, but how we did it. And it really highlighted the difficulties and the nuances of conducting patient-oriented research. So again, keeping it real, making sure we aren't glossing over everything, but really diving in and talking about the tensions and challenges as well. And one of the standout comments from our study is, what happens when lived experience is living? So this speaks to a reality that our co-researchers weren't just reflecting on past experiences, they were actively navigating these experiences in real time. For instance, we had co-researchers who had to remain private partners due to familial and cultural stigma around mental illness, which required creative strategies for safe participation. Technology played a really important role here, and it allowed these partners to engage while also protecting their safety. We also had a participant who was precariously housed. They had no phone, no internet access. They actually relied on a public library for connectivity. And we actually managed to provide them with a phone and internet support, which not only enabled their participation, but it also led to some unexpected positive outcomes. This individual was able to gain additional care, they were able to find work, and they're now contributing to program redesign for mental health supports. Beyond the research process, 3 partners in our study experienced qualitative and quantitative improvements in their health and well-being. Another example would probably be myself. As the digital advocacy architect, I am now running the voice study, which kind of branches off of hearts. So what we're doing in that study now is focusing on social media and also reaching out to plays a large role in social movements. And our aim in Voice is to determine how we can actually utilize social media to mobilize our knowledge and reach equity-deserving youth. And this is extremely important no matter what kind of research you're conducting. We want to be able to reach everyone. We want to get knowledge out there, and we also want to do it in a way that is practical. So I am currently working with other members of the Heart Study team, including Laetitia in this project, thanks to the new skills, capacities, and confidence I developed during the Heart Study. These stories really highlight the power, the possibilities, and the opportunities of engaged scholarship when it's executed with genuine reciprocity and shared purpose. We really believe that engaged scholarship can reach its highest purpose, but there's still work to be done to fully realize this vision. And as Sandy says, this manuscript is our love letter to patient-oriented research because we do want to hold it to its highest possibilities. Sandy, if you could go to the next slide, please. And this slide is just to kind of say again, we try to be as practical as possible and not theoretical, like how we actually move from the issues, how we approached it, what we called it, and what we did about it. There's lots of things we would continue to refine and add, but we thought that this would be a good place to start, and that's why we're happy to share any of what we've done so that others can build on it, change it, and transform it. And I'm going to pass it over to Laetitia for the next slide here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alyshah. So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about all the amazing work that Sandy had to put in for patient-oriented research, because a lot does go into it. So I know Sandy always wants to make the space for us, but this is definitely a little call out to her and all the work that does go behind patient-oriented research. So to effectively engage in the study and make meaningful decisions, we needed the resources to help us feel confident in our ability to contribute. This is really going off on what Alyshah was saying, that Sandy didn't cherry pick members. And when you decide to work with those equity deserving individuals and you are committed to actually bringing those diverse backgrounds together, not everyone is coming from that same academic background. A phrase that we often hear is that research kind of feels like it's in an ivory tower, and that is true sometimes. And what that means is some of those youth that you are engaging in patient-oriented research, not everyone is at that same background. So what do? Do you only cherry pick those who always flock to these opportunities because they feel comfortable in that space? Or do you make that space more accessible for all the diverse backgrounds that you want to hear from that are only going to strengthen, the work that you're trying to do? So call out to Sandy because she put a significant amount of the upstream work, which you can see detailed in our impact report. This work was critical to ensuring that we felt like we were on equal footing in the project, regardless of our starting points. Sandy provided multiple resources, blog posts, explainers, explainer videos, kind of like the one you saw at the beginning of today's presentation, and she cultivated a unique space for us to grow. This space was called the Collaboratory, which stands for Collaboration and Laboratory. It served as a workshop environment where we could focus on specific skills that aligned with our personal goals for the study. And I want to pause there because that's something that's really important to recognize, that just because you're gathering everyone into this academic, this research space, doesn't mean that everyone is walking away with the same goal. Maybe for some people, they do want that publication, but maybe for some others, they want to practice their public speaking. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but towards the end, you'll see that we did have quite a few, successful presentations. Something that I shared with Sandy and Alyshah is that the study actually brought us really close together as well. We were both U of A students, and when we got to meet, we instantly clicked. So a personal goal coming out of that was, cultivating a friendship. And I think, with everyone on the study, they really did feel connected to one another, and it was a huge community that we built. So many of us wanted to take an active role in decision-making, guiding the study, and writing publications. But even if we had these goals, we didn't necessarily have the initial skills or knowledge on where to begin, but that was okay because as you can see in our impact report, Sandy helped build that foundation for us. So as mentioned regarding our views of power earlier, what Sandy did wasn't about empowering us. We already had the power we needed. It was about removing the barriers that stood in our way and giving us the space and tools to express what we already knew and contribute meaningfully. So to kind of take some of this that might sound a little abstract, sometimes we would have these Zoom sessions and we would just kind of share like what are some barriers that we had to mental health care, and we would have this really huge Jamboard. And I know that question seems like something that, everyone already asks, right? But no one was asking about the little details, like actually getting to the waiting room, sitting in that waiting room, feeling anxious that someone might see you, the transition, from pediatric care to adult care. So we already knew all this. These were our lived experiences that we were sharing. But now with these tools that Sandy provided us, this was, her kind of letting us know, like, you have this knowledge. This is how we can translate it into what you want to achieve as your personal goal. So one of the ways that we did this was by giving the pairs the microphone, both metaphorically and practically, to share our knowledge and insights. A tangible example of this effort was the creation of a searchable database, giving us access to background research on patient-oriented research. And I know that, a lot of you guys from the U of C, from all these academic backgrounds, if you do not have university login credentials for so many of these journals, you cannot access them. There are not enough open access journals out there. So creating this database is making that knowledge accessible. And when you think about the nature of health research specifically, it should be accessible to everyone. It is research that benefits everyone's lives, not just the lives of those who are in academia. But this tool allowed all of us, regardless of our prior knowledge or experience, to delve deeper into the research, enabling us to contribute to the writing of this paper with a strong foundation. And it made the engagement process much more accessible for all of us. And Sandy, maybe I'll pass it over to Alyshah for the next slide.
So here's another example of us reverse engineering the process and going through to see what the literature has said and our own critical reflections on it. what really resonated with us and what didn't, and what we thought were most important to address in our study. We really went in, we had discussions, we reflected, we did our best to ensure that we were really going through the process in a meaningful, thoughtful way. We wanted to be part of the solution, not continuing to discuss what's wrong with patient-oriented research. And Sandy, if you could go to the next slide. So we won't have time to cover everything today, but you can refer to the manuscript for more detailed information. What we really want to focus on today is how we tackled the challenges identified in both the literature and in our own study. We faced some real challenges and ones that aren't always talked about openly, but like we emphasized, we did not shy away from them. We wanted to face them head on. A critical point that we wanted to emphasize is the importance of putting questions back to funders and principal investigators. So specifically, there needs to be clear supports for people considering involvement in health research so that they can assess whether the study environment is truly engaged and inclusive. I know as a student, health research is very popular. It's something we all want to be involved in. And as a principal investigator, as a funder, it's really important to make sure that we're creating a good space for these people to join, for everyone to join. A couple of examples of how we did this is, first of all, our solidarity statement as a living document, which you'll see on the slide here. Instead of starting with something like, a terms of reference or a project charter, we wanted to start with a solidarity statement, which acted as a living document. We returned to it throughout the study, recognizing that our systems, especially in health research, are often structured for hierarchy, not for equal partnership. Our goal was to challenge this structure from the start. And basically what we say in this solidarity statement is, we don't think equal means the same, but are we equal in value? Yes. Everybody who joined the study, they contributed in some way, shape, or form. And it is through these contributions that we are here today, that we have these manuscripts published. And so it's figuring out how to support everyone's full capacity, especially with partners from all 10 provinces in this study. And, this had some challenges in terms of time zones, but it's a learning process. It was something that we think is incredibly crucial, and it's a process that we continue to refine as we went on with the study. Now, the heart study was a mixed method study, and while some of us had experience in either quantitative or qualitative research, no one was really familiar with mixed methods, and some people really didn't have any research experience at all, myself included. But no one was ever made to feel like they were lacking, that they couldn't be involved because they didn't understand jargon, they didn't have this research background. Sandy really wanted to include us all in a way that would help us engage fully and confidently in the research. She gave us a ton of resources, for example, to break down the methodologies. There'd be presentations, definitions, different ways we could use to further understand this process. And another example would be the video you guys saw earlier that Sandy made. It kind of simplifies what we are trying to get out there, and it makes it more meaningful if people understand. And it's important to mention that there weren't any grants supporting this study, but despite this, Sandy worked tirelessly around the clock to create all these resources and provide the support we need. We literally built these structures from scratch because none were available to us. And we think that that's a significant barrier to meaningful engagement. But in terms of sustainability or expectations, what Sandy did, even though amazing, was not really reasonable. It's not practical. It's a lot of work. And that's why we're calling for systems change and changes in the how of participatory research. A helpful metaphor for this is kind of like trying to build a house, but you don't have any tools. You don't have the right tools to build a house. To do patient-oriented research without the necessary infrastructure, the supports, the resources, the funding to help us succeed is just not fair or just. And with this push towards health research involving more lived and living experience without the tools for success, a lot of people are going to be harmed in the process. This is a process that takes a lot of work, and without these tools, burnout is a very real thing, and that's not something that we want. This manuscript is not just a report on our study, it's part of our call to action. We're advocating for the creation of resources, removal of barriers, and increased support so that people with lived and living experience, particularly young adults, can fully engage in this type of work. The bottom line is that we know young adults and people with lived experiences have the ability to contribute meaningfully, but the systemic barriers in place make it much harder for them to engage. I know at one point, I was struggling to find research to involve myself in, to learn more about academia, and this study really did include me in a way where I could understand what was going on. And if there were more tools out there, more ways that this type of research could continue, I think a lot more people would love to have some similar opportunities. So this manuscript, we are putting out a call to action for funders, institutions, and researchers to provide the tools and structures that are missing so that future research teams won't have to struggle like we did.
So one of the most critical conversations we had as a team and that we want to share with you was realizing about halfway through the study that Sandy was the real deal. And I know what you're thinking. Well, of course she was the real deal. She's the one who recruited you all, right? But no, this wasn't just another typical patient-oriented research project. This is what patient-oriented research should be. We all shared this sentiment. Every one of us saw for the first time what it could actually look like when done right. Many of us had previously been involved in health research as young adults with lived experience. And while people often say the right things about valuing our voices and contributions, it rarely translates into actual shared power and decision making. I think a term that's really been emerging rightfully is tokenism of youth, or the fact that realistically, I know Sandy mentions that she kind of did this without the funds, but there are funds out there that, just for recruiting youth or having a youth advisory council, you can get some grants. You kind of meet with those young people once every 2 to 3 months, and it just feels very tokenistic. And I promise you, youth, they pick up on that. And that's so much more harmful than helpful. And in the realm of health research and mental health research, you do not want to be propagating harm. And that is something that Sandy saw to her core. And I think, yeah, it is a lot of really hard work to kind of share that power with your patient-oriented research partners, but it's work that needs to be done. So while in other projects, we were often praised as the most valuable players and told how important our voices were, the reality was different. And, it's such a basic thing. I think they teach it to kids in elementary, but show, don't tell. I don't need to be told that my contributions are important. I need to be doing the things that I feel are important. I need to be able to see some tangible results. Which is the number one thing that Sandy focused on. It was new, it was refreshing. And I think what Sandy was also kind of alluding to earlier is that when everyone initially entered the study, I think we're almost like a little scared. We have so many burnt experiences. We kind of know like the introduce yourself professionally. Oh, you do this task, you look at these social media posts, that's really what we're used to. So Sandy, she talks about all this impact report work that she did, and she laid the groundwork, yeah. But what you don't see is the fact that Sandy went out of her way to kind of break the shell in everyone and to show us that she was the real deal. She wasn't someone who was here to give us the same experience of things we had already seen. So when we talk about, engaging youth in research and patient-oriented research, that's the aspect that researchers need to understand, that it takes a lot of work to not only lay that groundwork for your co-researchers, but to help them break out of their shell and to build mutual trust. And that can take time. So also accommodate for that in your timeline. I know it's something that we like to talk about in the messy aspects, but this type of research can take a bit longer than you expect sometimes, and you just can't let perfection be the enemy of good, but sharing that power is crucial. So while we were often only given superficial tasks in the past, things like choosing a font on a slide or the color for a poster, we were really told that the tasks we did with Sandy, they were significant. We did the real decision making, authority, and we shared power with Sandy. So for the first time, we did feel that Sandy truly trusted us and believed in us, and she was actually doing all the right things. So even when it comes to presentations like you're seeing today, Sandy wasn't in the limelight with us as props. I mean, Sandy, she's always the first one to say that I want to give young people the voice. I want, you and Alyshah to kind of take over the bulk of sharing the slides here today. So yeah, we delivered the presentations. It was our work, our research. We were involved and we were proud. And the stage, ultimately, it was shared equally. We had real decision-making power. Our suggestions were taken seriously, and many of the ways the research unfolded, the outputs, the activities, and even the publications were driven by the co-researcher team. I know it was mentioned that we had 5 manuscripts related to patient-oriented research and the voice study. That's a lot to come out of one study in a very short time frame. So the study wasn't shaped by Sandy alone. It was shaped by our ideas and our wishes. And I think, Sandy being able to take the lead and say that if making our ideas into reality, that takes a lot of time and effort. But it's something that Sandy did. Like, for example, the Storytellers Project was born out of what we, the team, wanted to explore and create. The study looks the way it does because of who we are as a team, our collaboration, our solidarity. It's important to emphasize that the study wouldn't look the same with any other group of young adults. It wasn't a case of slotting anyone in and expecting the same result. The Heart study is a direct reflection of the unique contributions and shared visions, hopes, and leadership of the Hearts team. Sandy, maybe I'll pass it up for the next slide, our little humble brag. And this is what I was alluding to earlier. So while numbers aren't really our thing, and we do like to follow Kendrick Lamar's advice to be humble, it is important to stand in our success and our victories for ourselves and the work that we're doing, but also to demonstrate the true power of engaged scholarship when done right. You can actually have it all, and we feel that's the power of this type of research. Again, if it's done as it's intended. I trust that everyone here can read the slide, see the slide. I know we're cutting it close on time, so maybe Sandy, I'll go to the next slide.
Awesome. Now we showed this slide, we showed this slide because we want to leave you with, it wasn't really all the tools that we used, like we mentioned before. We used a lot of tools. This was a big project, but we had to get creative to make sure that everything was accessible. Our tools were not the most important part. It wasn't the thing that made the study. Sandy calls it a low-tech, high-touch approach. If you could go on to the next slide, Sandy. It was actually the trust and safety we built that made the difference. And like another example, We recruited for the study because usually there is a lot of attrition, especially for equity deserving, equity owed people, and that our study was not able to provide all the accommodations we would have liked to if we had the resources. But despite this, the fact that our group was almost 20 strong by the end with honorary members was because we created an environment where people felt safe, respected, and where we trusted that we were there for each other and that we were there for the research. Moreover, and perhaps most importantly, it wasn't perfect, and we're not here to give that impression. We definitely had our ups, we had our downs. The person that we were most individually close with was Sandy, and that's because she was our key point of contact. You know, that's who we met when we joined the study. She had regular meetings with us. She involved us in all these different things. But the good thing is we got to meet other people. We had for example, Laetitia and I met through the knowledge mobilization part. We did get to build connections with other people as well. We had significant time limitations with it being a doctoral study, and we do want to be clear about our own limitations, but very much aim to transform our process, and we felt it. Basically, we had a lot of challenges. Patient-oriented research is not always easy, but we aimed to make sure that the connections we built, the way that we went about doing things was accessible, inclusive, and transformative, that it is creating a real change. We felt safe and we felt trust that that was the most important thing we architected in this study. And I'll pass it on to Laetitia now.
So our call to action is simple. You're not alone. There is often a narrative that we're competing for limited resources or funding, but that mindset is false and counterproductive. We won't get very far by competing. Instead, we believe that collaboration is the way forward. By working together, sharing what we know, and pooling our resources, we can all move further and achieve more. If there's anything from our study that could help you or your research, please let us know. We would be so happy to share any and all of our tools, methods, and insights. We believe in the power of shared knowledge to advance the field. Even if you folks want to ask questions after the fact, we can share our contact information. We are just really here to help propagate this type of research because it is a type of research that changes the field. So we are gonna, also ask researchers to critically assess whether they have the capacity to do engaged scholarship, the kind that truly involves people with a lived experience, not just token participation. And if that capacity isn't there, we need to think about the risks, both to the research itself and to the people with lived experience involved. And an anecdote I'll kind of say is that sometimes you can't assess if the work you're doing is meaningful through those traditional metrics. Something that kind of the whole study saw is that by some traditional metrics, we failed as a study. We talk about messiness very openly, but the thing is, those traditional metrics, they're not assessing emotional impact, community impact. They're not measuring, is your team, or do they trust you and have they gained something from that experience? So to funders, our message is clear. It's essential to help resource studies that want to do engaged scholarship properly. And that's not always going to go by the book with those traditional metrics and those traditional standards that sometimes those funders want to see. You have to provide appropriate accessibilities, remove barriers to participation, and compensating the global experience and expertise that study members bring. So when you resource and support engaged scholarship holistically, the research that is produced is better. And the problems that we can solve together are far bigger and more impactful. Everyone wins when we focus on genuine collaboration, accessibility, and shared goals. This is how we move forward together. And I'll wrap it up now and ask if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much to our presenters, Sandy, Laetitia, Alyshah. We are actually out of time, but maybe if anyone has one question, then we can bring it to the group. And then for other questions, please feel free to reach out directly to Sandy, Laetitia, and Alyshah. Anyone have any one question for our presenters?
Sorry, I was trying to put up my hand and I can't find the hands up button
No
here.
worries, Isabel, go ahead.
Every time I go on Zoom, it's had an update, and I'm like, why did you move things? Why? Okay, so just really quick, absolutely love this presentation. A lot of what you're doing really reflects my